two-time Super Bowl winner and Hall of Famer, Fox's own family, Jimmy Johnson. Coach, let's get it started with the Super Bowl. Almost a week away from Tom Brady's 10th Super Bowl appearance, but his first in a Tampa uniform. Is this Tom Brady's most impressive Super Bowl run?
Well, I don't. You guys may disagree with me, but I think his most impressive run was when he had Randy Moss. Now they didn't win the Super Bowl, but they were a great team, back then. I think this is impressive because it's with a different team. But you look at this team, their success. They've got great receivers. Todd Bowles done a great job with that defense. So the supporting cast is a lot stronger right now than what he had in some of his previous runs.
Coach, let me ask you this. What is the hardest part about going back-to-back and winning back-to-back? Because that's what the Chiefs are trying to do now. You know the secret. What is it?
Yeah, I've talked to Brett Veach, general manager, and Andy Reid about it. In fact, I talked to Belichick about it after his first Super Bowl. After you have that kind of success in the Super Bowl, you go back and every player wants a new contract. Every secretary wants a raise. Every assistant coach wants a head coaching job somewhere. And so it's all about me, instead of the team. Now, the one thing the Chiefs have done, and they did in the offseason, some of those players took some team-friendly contracts to stay with that team to try to keep it together. So they've addressed that. The other thing, the second thing, is complacency comes in. You look at it, I remember my running back coach, Joe Brodsky, Emmitt Smith had held out for a couple of games. He came back in. And Joe Brodsky was screaming and hollering at Derek Glassick, the backup running back. And I said, Joe, hey, fine to coach Glassick, but, Emmitt Smith's going to be the guy out there playing. And Joe says, oh, he's a veteran. He knows what to do. He'll be fine on Sunday. I said, wait a minute. Just because he's a veteran, and just because you've been here and you're buddies now, like a lot of assistant coaches get with some of those older pro players, you stop pushing them. You got to demand it. And I told Bill, I said, you're the only guy that's got the hammer. You got to make sure that you demand that they get better.
Coach, I like that. You brought up how after you win a Super Bowl, things start to become a lot more about me. Well, let's pivot a little bit. Deshaun Watson, he's really exercising player mobility. It wasn't nearly as relevant when you were coaching and dominating. Do you have an issue with Deshaun Watson wanting out of Houston?
I've got a little bit of a problem with it, in that, I know he's upset. First of all, I'm upset with Houston that they let Hopkins get out of there. That
Right.
should have never happened. And I think had he stayed, Watson might have been a little bit better off. But you look at it, you cannot let a franchise quarterback leave. Somehow, some way, David Culley's got to go in there and say, hey, put my ego aside. How can we work this out? What do you want? Well, how can we build this thing together? Somehow, some way, they've got to convince him to stay.
Now, Coach, you mentioned a franchise quarterback leaving. Well, Tom Brady, playing in his 10th Super Bowl, left New England. And as we were talking about Bill Belichick, we've been having this debate, this argument all week long. So settle it for us, if you could, Coach. Who deserves more credit in that dynasty, Bill Belichick or Tom Brady?
Well, I could settle it in a hurry right now. Tom Brady was a 7th-round pick out of Michigan. A lot of teams didn't even want him. I don't remember him being the greatest of all time coming out of Michigan. So somebody developed this quarterback. Somebody worked with him. Somebody molded this quarterback into the greatest of all time. Now, I don't know who did this. Now, Acho. Bill Belichick, the greatest coach of all time. I think he helped Tom Brady get to this point.
Wait a second now, Coach. You just made this show so much harder for me the next hour. But so let me ask you something. Let me ask you this. Now that Tom Brady has gone to a completely different coach that hasn't won or been to a Super Bowl as a head coach, is that not a slight indictment on the value Bill Belichick added to Tom Brady versus the value Tom Brady added to Bill Belichick, Coach?
Well, I think Bill Belichick, without question, people look at him and they know how disciplined he is. and they know how hard-driven he is. You look at Tom Brady, when he first went to the Buccaneers, they were a sloppy football team. Turned the ball over, lots of penalties. And you look at the Chicago game, they had 11 penalties against Chicago, lost by 1 point. And Brady goes to the sideline and is screaming and hollering. This is not the way you do it. The very next week, they had 0 offensive penalties. They beat Green Bay 38-10. So Tom Brady was taught the right way to do it.
That's good.
And I think he brought that championship discipline to Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's the one that brought it down there because they were not a disciplined football team a year ago. They turned the ball over and had penalties. They're a disciplined football team right now. That's why they're in the Super Bowl.
Now, Coach, let's take you to a place where you're familiar, the Dallas Cowboys, and switch gears a little bit. And their quarterback situation. A lot of free agent quarterbacks out there, a lot of quarterbacks that are under contract potentially up for trade. Would you be interested in some of those quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, et cetera, or stick with Dak Prescott?
Yeah. Well, no. Let me have Aaron Rodgers. Or let me
Over
have Patrick
Dak?
Mahomes. Yeah, you bet. They're both more talented than Dak. But you don't ever get rid of a quarterback or a player until you find somebody better.
Ooh, that's
and they're
good.
not going to get those guys. Now, they're never going to get those guys. They've got a great leader that it's an outstanding quarterback that can win you a championship. Get him signed. They should have signed him 3 years ago. They should have signed him 2 years ago. They should have signed him this offseason, but they wanted 5 years rather than 4 years. They would have saved a lot of money had they signed him any one of those previous 3 years. Get him signed. He's your quarterback.
Coach, let me ask you this, because this is a question that everybody's wondering. Dak Prescott this year was about 1-3. If you count the Giants game, he had 2 wins, 2 playoff appearances, 1 playoff win. If you're the coach or Jerry Jones, why are you so convinced that you can win a Super Bowl with Dak? Not saying you can't win a lot of games, but why is Jimmy Johnson convinced that Dak Prescott can win a Super Bowl?
Let's see. Let me just think. Troy Aikman, as great a quarterback as he was, won 0 games his first year. Steve Walsh won 1 game. We were 1-15. Now, the next year, I gave him a little bit of a supporting cast, and we won 7. Had he not hurt his shoulder, we'd have been in the playoffs the second year. And I sat down with Troy, and I said, Troy, I'm sorry you didn't make the Pro Bowl. He said, Coach, you keep bringing in players and giving me some talent around me. I'll make plenty of Pro Bowls. Now, we won our first Super Bowl. We were the youngest team in the league, and everybody talks about the triplets with Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin and Troy Aikman. They went into the Hall of Fame. But we were number 1 in the NFL total defense. And so, you look at Dak, he had a very mediocre record this year to start out. Their defense, nobody could have won with that defense the way they played. So you got to have the right supporting cast for any quarterback to win.
Coach, obviously one of the greatest in Cowboys history, one of the greatest the game has seen. So let's talk coaches. Coaches, typically great coaches can come in and win instantly. At least you see winning traits and characteristics. Do you see that from Mike McCarthy, and do you think he's the right guy for that Cowboys head coaching job?
I think he is. I think time will tell.
Okay, so you're hesitant.
You looked at me and you said, oh, boy, he's
Hey, we've been in the locker room before, Coach. We know how Coach talks. Coach, you took a step back with that one.
Don't get nervous, Coach.
Yeah, you've been here before.
I did say time will tell. I think he's got to straighten out that defense somehow.
Yeah.
I think he will be fine offensively. But, hey, until you do it, you really don't know.
Okay, well, Urban Meyer, let's talk about a coach we do know, and he has done it, but not at the pro level. Your thoughts on Urban Meyer in Jacksonville? Let you off the hook a little bit.
I think, yeah, you did. Thank you. I think he's in for a rude awakening. He talked to me, we obviously had a lot of conversations, but I said, hey, if you think college was a grind, you wait till you get in professional football, especially if you're handling personnel, which I did. Now a lot of pro coaches, they don't deal with personnel, so they got a little bit of a life after the season. If you're handling personnel plus you're the head coach, you have no life. And it would be foolish for Urban not to handle personnel because he knows all those great college players, so he should be handling the draft. But it's going to be around the clock 12 months out of the year. It's going to be a grind. Now, I think he's a great CEO. I think he's very smart, very passionate. He's got to get the right coaching staff, and he's got to bring in the talent. If he does that, they got a chance to win.
Coach, I got one for you. Everybody, well, not everybody knows, but you and I know if you've played the game, college is different than pro. In college, you're kind of hurting these athletes. They're on scholarship checks. Head coach is now making $5-6 million. Head coach is a king. In the pros, the players often make more than the coach. What is the secret to having success at the college level and the pro level, which you had?
Well, I think in college, I found this out when I left the University of Miami and went to the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys had one of the greatest coaches of all time, Tom Landry, and his staff. They had 3 straight losing seasons. They were 3-13, worse than the league. Well, it wasn't because of coaching. It was because of talent. And then I realized, maybe I won all those games at Miami because I had better players than everybody. Now, and you look, Alabama, Ohio State, my wife Rhonda could win 10. Really, they don't need a coach. I mean, really, there's such a difference in the talent level in college. Like Steve Spurrier here, when he was at University of Florida, they could turn it over 5 or 6 times, and they were still going to beat them by 20. He went to Washington with the same style of offense. They turned it over, and they got beat by some of the worst teams in the league. So, I think, there's so little difference in professional teams that you have to play well every single week. And plus, the way the league is structured, parity is going to be in there with the draft and with free agency, with the salary cap. So it's a lot more difficult coaching in professional football than what it is in college. In college, if you happen to land one of those great jobs like University of Texas, you ought to win 10.
Now, Coach, we are so grateful to have you on our show. Speak for yourself. We have a lot of personality on this show, so here's another one I need you to settle. Not your wife. I need you to be the coach on the draft clock once again. We just heard your first-round selection. Okay. You picked Aaron Rodgers over Dak Prescott. Let's go to the second round. You need some defense. You got Emmanuel Acho, linebacker from Texas. And then you got this unknown defensive end from Columbia, me, Marcellus Wiley. Who you drafting, Coach?
Well, I'll do the same thing that I did for Michael Strahan. I brought Strahan in, as one of my 20 visits right before the draft, and I said, hey, Michael, we want you. And I put a scout in his home day of the draft, and a scout is sitting there with Michael, and they're waiting, and Michael's saying, hey, I'm from Houston. I'm going to go to the Dallas Cowboys. He's watching the draft. And it says the Dallas Cowboys moved down in round 2 and pick up another pick in round 3. And so the Giants drafted him. So if I was going to draft either of you guys, I would move down in the draft.
He's going to pick up Whitlock in the 3rd round. That's all I heard right there. All right, Coach, last question right here. Michelob Ultra just pre-released a Super Bowl commercial that asks an interesting question. Are you happy because you win, or do you win because you're happy? You've won a lot, so what's your answer?
Well, it kind of struck a nerve because it kind of fits our deal. I said, hey, without question, I was happy when we won, but did we win because I was happy? And I know this. If I'm upbeat and positive and I'm happy, I'm a much better coach. And you're better on television when you're happy. Yeah. If you're all glum in one thing or another, you're not going to do as good a job. So, I think it's really a cool commercial. And the other thing, too, with Michelob Ultra, 95 calories and 2.6 carbs keeps me fit and healthy and active. So, hey, you got to stay healthy on top of that.
Oh, appreciate you so much, Coach. Thanks for coming on our show, making us happier and making this our best interview so far. Thanks, Coach. And Jimmy Johnson's brought to us.
Okay, I wouldn't have traded down to get you guys.
Yeah, right. Hey, look, put it this way. Second contract, I would have broke the salary cap anyway. That's how I ball, Coach. All right, Coach. Appreciate you.